My name is Shaggy. I work for Z104. I do mornings, 5:30 till 10. And recently I started doing nights now too, from 7 p.m. to midnight. So I get to go home for about 3 or 4 hours a day. So thank you.
I didn't know you were doing that.
Oh, yes, sir.
Man, one man doing the work of 10.
That's it.
I'm Dale Murray, a producer for the Steve Harvey Morning Show and the newscast, and I also host a community affairs program, Handle Those Perspectives.
I'm Aubrey, aka Jafari Jones, president of BLM 757, activist, support suicide prevention. Got me into it. My 14-year-old cousin committed suicide due to bullying. It's about 4 years ago, and we've been advocating for that and Black Lives for the last almost 4 years, come July 10th.
Amanda Roten, I'm the executive director of the Newport News Police Foundation. We do a lot of community engagement, community outreach programs, as well as officer mental health, different things of that nature.
Steve Kelly, pastor of Wave Church. I have campuses in Norfolk, 2 in Virginia Beach, and a few other places. Good to be here.
Courtney McBath, served Calvary Revival Church, been there for the last 30 years.
I'm Todd Jones, captain at the 4th Police Precinct, which is Kempsville. Be there tomorrow.
Okay.
With Virginia Beach Police Department.
William Midget with the Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office. I'm a lieutenant. Known Brandon for a very, very long time, from Princess Anne High School days when I used to coach basketball there. So very interested in coming here.
I could shoot.
We'll talk about that later.
That's not what we heard.
My name is Kathy Hyatt. I'm the Public Information Officer at the Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office, so I handle all our media and communications. And formerly I worked for the Virginian Pilot, and I'm also a PA alum as well.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again for everyone that's came. And now if Bishop and Pastor Steve, if you could lead us all in prayer, that would be very appreciated.
Lord, thank you for the opportunity to be together. Thank you, Lord, that your word tells us that you are concerned about justice. And you said yourself that you came to set free those that are oppressed. And so, Lord, whatever comes out of this conversation that seeks to do your will, to bring justice and to deliver the oppressed, we come in agreement with that. And we thank you for hearts that are open, minds that are clear, and for the mutual contribution that all of us can make to this process. We thank you for that. In Jesus' name.
Amen. So I'm going to start by saying positive note. Congratulations on Saturday for over 700 plus people protesting from Mount Trashmore to Town Center with no issues at all, no arrests to my knowledge, no vandalism, and getting text messages from friends of mine who were at Town Center there saying how happy it was. So congratulations for the city, Hampton Roads, and then the protesters for making your word heard without no news station being able to run with different stories. So that's first things first. I would like to open this by asking anyone at the table, and I guess Jafari, I guess you'd be the first one to answer this. You said earlier, 4 years ago, you really started the Black Lives Matter 757 because of, was it Fidel?
Philando
Castile, yeah.
and William Chapman.
And you've been very vocal in the community. Have you noticed within the past 2 weeks, month, 6 months, any change to the way people perceive you or the way the community gets behind you? Have you noticed any difference?
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift in the matrix. There's definitely been, I said, when you're consistent with the message, when you first come out, people have to speculate what your intentions are, which is understandable, which is why we kind of try to operate on the back end and not force much of too much. But I guess once you have been in it for as long as you have, just like with any other thing, if you're sticking with it consistent, the message is consistent, there's really nothing that can be denied. And then when you actually see what you've been speaking on come to fruition, it helps the cause even more, especially when you have a track record, you have video document, you have picture document. It's kind of undeniable. At this point, if you're denying it, it's kind of out of your own ignorance.
Anybody else here feel that you've noticed a shift or a change in the way that the community or police department is trying to change the narrative of what has happened for centuries? That we're not going to, of course, think we all understand we're not gonna fix this today. You know, we're not gonna have the answer today, but is there anybody else that feels could be a slight shift in the way we view and try to make everyone?
So let me add some comments to that. I think awareness has incredibly increased, not just in the last 4 years, but I've been doing this for 33 years, so I can say that I've noticed a shift in positive awareness in things that we're trying to do to improve community relations, to build bridges where we never did before. I can tell you that there were some places as the police that you just didn't feel welcomed in there at all, and it was a challenge. It was a challenge to go in there, make connections, build bridges, establish relationships, and that doesn't happen overnight. So my 30 plus years, I can say that we see improvement, so yes, that's there. We see there's a lot of work to do still, and we were willing to do that. We want to do that, but it starts with building the bridges and establishing the relationships. So that foundation, I'd like to think, is very well established and has been built over the last several decades. Another area where I notice improvement is in our recruiting efforts. We know that our numbers within the organization could be better. We want them to be better. So when you look at the demographics of the city, and then you look at the demographics of your organization, they should be pretty close, and ours aren't. Now, I can show you numbers and show you where we're making strides to increase those numbers. We want them to continue to trend upwards, but it's not happening as quickly as we'd like. So there's a lot of efforts that we're trying to do as an organization to reach out to minority communities and say, hey, come with us, be part of this change that we have talked about. We want to be a part of the change, so let's start now. Let's do something greater than yourself individually, so there's the intrinsic value. And there's the community efforts of, if we bring a more diverse group into our organization, then we grow as an organization. So those are two areas that I could offer from a profession.
How, if I may, how are police officers recruited? What does a police officer recruiting video looks like? Is it a guy rappelling down a building and a SWAT team, or is it?
No, that's a good question.
Or
It's a good question.
do they show officers talking with the community, engaging with kids?
So our campaign is called VBPD, meaning that you, the individual, are the organization. So it's not just all the high-speed stuff, the cool stuff that happens once in a blue moon, and as much as we'd love to say we do this stuff all the time, those in a lot of cases are our worst-case scenario. What do we do every day? We get out of the cars and we interact with people. We get out of the car, and people that have life-changing events, right? They rely on us to help them try to get their lives back together. So in many cases, unfortunately, because of the nature of the work, these are not pleasant experiences. People call because their house got broken into, because they've had a horrific accident, because this happened, because that happened, and they want to get their lives back together. So by being a calm, reassuring voice, by being a caring, respected person, and treating others with dignity and respect, whether you're going to jail or not, it's about treating people the way you want to be treated. So that's where you start building those bridges. So our recruiting video is about being part of something bigger than yourself and helping others who are in need, helping vulnerable people get their lives back together. So yeah, we do have a lot of cool toys, helicopters, horses. We've got the K9 unit. We've got, there's all these what we call specialized units. And there's investigative units that people really get, people like to solve that mystery. The homicide squad, the robbery squad, this, that, and the other, that like to put these puzzles together that can help us tremendously with computer skills or whodunit skills, things like that. What we want to do is showcase that everybody brings something to the table. You have a unique skill set that we could tap into. It's, do you want to do it? And do you want to be a part of change, number one, part of something bigger than yourself, number one, help your fellow man. That's what it's about. So there is a recruiting video, yes.
Is it updated I mean, again, I know nothing, so I do
Yeah,
apologize. But
so-
is it updated yearly, every 2 years?
Every few years or so, and it's well done. It's professionally done.
Yes, sir.
So, and you know, we like to, because here's the other thing we want to sell too. We're not just selling a job; we're selling the city. Because when you come to Virginia Beach, we're selling you on the idea that this is a great place to live. It's a great place to send your kids to school. It's a great place to vacation or go out and hit a rec center. There's so many things. So we're selling you on a lifestyle package, if you will, not just, hey, you get paid every 2 weeks and you might get to do X, Y, and Z. So it's big picture things, and we're trying to promote more than just you can get a job. It's you can have a very decent way of life. Virginia Beach has bragged for years that lowest crime rate of the city our size in the country. Okay, so the economy is good here. We have the military here. We have a strong agricultural backbone, if you will, for our economy. So the economy tends to favor this area. So when we sell you to Virginia Beach and the PD or some job here, we're really selling you on living and working in Virginia Beach.
Do you, if I could ask, do you look for the output of the citizens when putting all this together,
Yes.
or is it strictly
Yes.
internal?
No. So we did internal for decades, and for the longest time, it was fine. I can tell you 30 years ago, if we were going to hire 30 people, we would have 400 or 500 people apply. So that's in our favor, right? And we would have a very vigorous process on how do we pick the best people to represent our organization. Because in police work, you have to get it right every time. Now, we're not perfect. Our officers are not perfect, and we can see what happens when people make mistakes, right? We have to feel confident that we're hiring the best people that will help those vulnerable folks and do the right thing every time. Not most of the time, not some of the time, every time. So, for years, the system pretty much ran itself. We would put an ad, and I'm going to date myself, put an ad in the paper. There was no internet then. Hey, police department's hiring, and people would stand in line at the door and drop off applications, handwritten applications, and we would find who we considered to be the best of the group. Now, we can't fill the positions that we have. We have vacancies. I don't know the exact number today, but if I said 70 to 80 out of 837, that would probably be close to accurate. So if we can tap into applicant resources, and by that I mean willing people. All right, remember the movie Rudy? There's some people that want to do the job but can't do the job, and there's some people who can do the job but they don't want to do the job. So we've got to find that mix of who is capable and willing to do the job and make it through the hiring process. So we've put a panel together. We've brought in our faith-based group. We've brought in business community, the academic community, minority communities. And we said, hey, help us brainstorm. Help us figure out where we can go and get applicants to apply to be in this job. So now I'm going to get a little academic on you. Community policing, right? We hear those terms all the time. It's very basic. It's very simple. It's the community and the police coming together. It's a partnership. And one of the things that this partnership does is it helps us solve problems. Now, most of the time, it's the police helping the community solve problems, whether it's a crime problem, whether it's the park's run down and needs to be renovated, whatever that problem is. Well, now the problem might be us. Help us solve the problem of getting more people interested in the profession, and help us get our minority numbers up, applicants up, interest up, so that our department reflects what the city reflects. Okay, that makes sense?
Yeah.
Shay, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Why did you ask that? Why did you ask the original question? The original question had, when you asked, have you seen any change. I know behind most questions there's some rationale behind the question.
Yeah, because I feel as a Virginia Beach, 38 years lived here. I've seen, the Trayvon Martin hoods up, protests. I've been, again, not to 30 protests, but I've been to quite a few in this area, and I've noticed just in the past, I would say maybe, June, 10 days, I feel like the other day, I was driving down Virginia Beach Boulevard, there was about 25 protesters on the boulevard, right here, right by the radio station. And I made a U-turn, and my buddy Charles Black from 95.7's in the room, and I walked over to, say hi and ask if anyone needed anything. And there was a few of the protesters that were upset because they couldn't be in the street. But majority of the protesters were talking to the police, like, not that it was all better, but there was almost like there's now a conversation happening right in front of my eyes. But again, I don't know, because this man has been doing it for so long, and he's been, Friday you were at Fort Monroe, and so he's been doing it. So I asked him, because I can't see everything. I only see what I go to, which was like the Sunday night, May 31st. I walked from 7th Street to 22nd Street, and it was peaceful. It was great. And then I get in my car, and all I hear is about is looting and fighting. I'm going, I didn't see any of that.
Right.
And so I'm going on the radio expressing what I see, because that's what I saw.
Exactly.
So I'm asking the man who I consider, I don't want to say a professional or an expert, but he's way more expert at what's going on right now than I am. And I can't act like I know what this man goes through. So I wanted to ask if he's seen the change or shift, hopefully, in the last week or so.
But to go back to Jafar's response, though, his response, though, is interesting. The response is that there's so much evidence of wrong that you'd almost have to close your eyes now not to see it. I think it's important to note that a lot of what we call change is people finally waking up to the fact that the issue is real. And as a 60-year-old black man who raised in East Tennessee, I think it's, even in these conversations, it's just very important to start with the understanding that for many of us, I go all the way back to my grandfather. I can go to my dad. When he was pulled over, he was boy. And the police force's primary job was to keep black people in their place. So, and that has been the systemic issue in the United States. It ain't just a Southern problem either. So people in the North do it. I lived in Massachusetts from the time I was 17 until I was 25 or so. So Boston is where I became an adult, one of the most racist cities I've ever been in my entire life. The idea that things are better, I just appreciate you asking the question, but I think it's an important question to understand why it's better.
Yes, sir.
It's not better because the community is not asking for the police force to not make mistakes. Murder is not a mistake. So we're not talking about mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But people get a death chair in some states for murdering people. So this is not a mistake issue, and the community is not ridiculous in what they're asking, nor are they just kind of coming up with this idea of an issue with the police just because it's an issue, or because they're criminals, or because they're selling drugs, or whatever. This is years of this, and the change I think that we're seeing is that people, black and white and every color in between, are finally just admitting that there's a real problem. So why should we fight people who are protesting? Because what they're protesting is not just black people using a race card. It's a real issue. And the more I think that happens, the closer we get to real solutions, because I don't think you can discuss real solutions until everybody understands that it's a real problem. It's not just the way somebody sees it. You know what I'm saying? It's a factual issue. And I just for clarity's sake, I just want to make sure that we heard that it's better, but you'd almost have to be out of your mind
Right, and I'm
just-
agreeing with, we have a very long way to go.
Right.
But I wanted to just ask the question because of, in a world where we do turn on TV and everything is so negative, and I have a 10 and 7-year-old son who I'm explaining to them, and I mean, I showed them the video so they can understand a realization that, you know, African American people have to go through this on a daily basis. I want to make sure that we have some sort of hope
And like,
or
if I can-
grace that something can change.
If I can clarify, the tone towards the protests have improved. We still have to get the legislation in place. We still have to get the reform in place, and we still have to do a dialogue of after the protest, because this is going to eventually die down again, as it has done over the last, like I said, my experience, 4 years, and times before that. Our initial starting in this in the 757 was one Philando Castile getting killed in front of his daughter. My son was the same age at that time, but at the same time, William Chapman was slain in Portsmouth here in Virginia by Stephen Rankin, Portsmouth police, unarmed, and the world doesn't say his name amongst the Mike Browns and Trayvon Martins. Not to say that any of those individuals are not equally as important, but the 757 has to stand up for his own. India Kager killed here with her child in the backseat because the Virginia Beach SWAT, executed a warrant on her boyfriend. They followed the car to a gas station, lit the car up with the baby in the back, no regard for that. That's right here locally. I feel like the world needs to know what's going on right here in the 757, like they know about Pharrell, like they know about Chris Brown, like they know about Trey Songz, like they know about Pusha T. The world needs to know that the 757 is in pain as well. So we're just getting back to subject as far as, like I said, with the protests, but now it's going to come time for the House of Delegates to get things together for legislation. It's going to come time for the Senate to get things in place, city councils to get things in place, and the mayors to step up, chief of police to step up for actual change, not just we're going to accept your protest now because we know you're mad, but then after it simmers down, we'll call you and we'll have our assistant get back to you. No, give that same attention now, and just like you made laws that fast for COVID-19, just like you implemented a curfew within 2 hours, do the same thing for the black community when it comes to laws and legislations and funding and things of that nature, making things happen in a positive light, because we see your hand, we see it's possible, we see it doesn't take the General Assembly to wait for an entire year to make things happen. Do it with urgency.
Bishop Macbeth, I echo your sentiments. I'm a product of the South Carolina. Kids would grow up fearing the police. They would run. There was no officer friendly. Police work wasn't seen as a friend of the community. And my question to you and to the Reverend, we've got laws in place, Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, but you can't legislate love. As spiritual leaders, how do you go about changing people's hearts and minds?
I'd love to answer that, but I'd love to just say, I think one of the changes that I am glad to see is I think there has been a change in the way in which we communicate medium. I think social media has been a game changer. I think that has brought to attention an unfiltered way of communicating, and I think there has been, and I agree with you, this cannot stop just with this moment. I know that for a white community to deal with this, in my mind, is like, this is painful. Can we please get past this and let's move forwards? And that's my concern, is that could and might happen, just as you said, unless there are some genuine changes. I think of this one story, just to answer your question now. I think social media has been a game changer. I think it's helped. I think it's accelerated everything, it's fast-tracked everything, and I think it's helping the story here. I really do. I think of these two people in the Bible who were honestly enemies of each other. And then because you asked the question, how do we bring about that? There's this guy called Herod, and there was a guy called Pilate, both in great positions of power and great positions of influence, who, you're asking a preacher now, so I'll give me a little moment to talk about it. They hated each other. They could not stand each other. And it was very clear in Scripture. And I love it because all that happened was the first guy, Pilate, is dealing with this guy, Jesus. the Jewish people wanted him dead. The crowds got in on it and said, crucify him, we want Barabbas. And Pilate didn't know what to do with him. Pilate goes, I don't know what to do. And he finds out, oh, wait a minute, you're under Herod's jurisdiction. Get him the greatest deal of light to pass him on Pilate on Herod. It says there, and this is my answer to your question, that Jesus neither spoke really to Pilate, he didn't even open his mouth, didn't even offer a defense, just stood there. And what I love is if we can just bring God or Jesus, and the Bible says that as a result of Jesus being in the presence of Pilate and Herod, he never brought them together. It was actually out of Pilate's joy to give this problem to Herod. But as a result of Jesus being between the two of them, they became friends. And I think the church has a role to play to represent who is the real heart of God and the real heart of Jesus and the heart and the intentionality we're made in God's image. I see we have a major role to play. And I think the more we can bring Jesus into this, I think they became friends. I've seen that happen. I've used that analogy at funerals with families who are feuding, and I've seen them hug each other and weep over a coffin. And I just think, the more we can bring, and this is me, the preacher talking, so you gotta, you know what I mean? I actually do think, legislation is not going to change a man's heart. Do you know what I mean? And we can make it illegal, and then you're left to try and deal with some of those challenges. So I think that the church has a role to play, and bringing God into it has a major role to play.
First of all, Captain Lieutenant, I want to say this, and I've been wanting to say this publicly, and I haven't said it yet, but I think sometimes it's almost as if sometimes we're picking on the police department in America. America is racist in every area of its life. Business, government, everywhere there's racism. It's a part of the fabric of America. It was built that way. It's not just the police department. The police department gets more press because they have more power and oftentimes seem to have more impunity. But I just want to go on record as saying the same racism that we identify in the police department, we identify in every segment of American life. It is the way it's the way America is. And hopefully as you all make changes, you will be able to say to the rest of America, you all need to make some changes too. And I say that because Pastor Steve talked about the transformative power of the gospel. There's two sides. There's that transformative power that he and I both totally agree with. And then we both also agree on the prophetic power of the church. And that's the ability to call right and call wrong. The reason where the church has been most complicit in racism is by its silence. And it has been in on this since the beginning. And it's been in on it in Virginia before there was ever a United States of America. I mean, as early as 1677, the Virginia delegates decided then, when the Anglican Church wanted to preach to slaves, the missionaries said, well, if we preach to them, then they'll become, and they get baptized, they'll become our brothers and sisters. Then we can't keep them in chains if we do that, can we? What do we do? So they went to the government, and that government, which was all Anglican men, decided, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pass a law that says they can receive Christ, get baptized, but it does not change their position, as they still stay slaves for the rest of their lives. Being our brother and sister doesn't keep us from chaining them. So once when the church accepted that in Virginia, it said it shook hands with the devil and said, we're in on this too. And so part of what happens to happen is the church, like Pastor Steve has said, has to preach Christ and his love, and that brings people together. But we also have to stand up and declare the truth of what's right and what's wrong. And that prophetic power then calls people to have to then check themselves because of that word that's come forth. I don't know if any of you all are Roman Catholic, but you can best see that in the Roman Catholic Church. If the Pope makes a statement, it changes again. You may not agree with it, but you ain't telling nobody. You ain't telling nobody.
You go to the bathroom by yourself and you really got thoughts.
You're on your own now, but So I think the church's silence has been where we've hurt the most. Because if we had spoken up, then we'd have power to bring transformation. But because we live in the same racism that we accuse the police department of having in church too.
I'm going to kind of piggyback on something you said earlier too. And again, if anyone has anything to say, like, please just jump out. You said you want the world or the country, whoever, to see 757 like they see Pharrell and Trey Songz and Chris Brown. You didn't say our names, but we get it. We get it.
Sorry.
No, but I will say, Bishop and Stephen, everyone said here, that I firmly